Hi, I'm James Kotecki. You're here with me in the C-Space Influencer Studio here at CES 2019, and with us is Duncan Crabtree-Ireland, the General Counsel and Chief Operating Officer, and actually not in that order, Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel of SAG-AFTRA. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, James. It's great to be here.
So let's start with a definition for those people who may be coming to this rather lengthy acronym new, or just hearing about your meeting for the first time here at CES. How do you introduce yourself and what you do?
Well, first of all, SAG-AFTRA, just in case anybody is not familiar with us, our full name is Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And what we are is we're the union and professional association for actors and all types of performers, broadcast journalists, recording artists in the United States. And so we represent about 160,000 performers and broadcasters who work in those industries. And so my job is to help run the operations of the union and also look out for legal affairs and basically as part of our team to make sure that we know what's going on, what's coming down the road in the future, and make sure we're out there protecting our members as best we can.
So that future piece is, I assume, why you come here to CES.
Absolutely. Every year we have a delegation that comes to CES because we're on the lookout for what might be coming down the road. Because if you wait until the technology actually hits, you're behind the curve. And so for us, considering that our role is to make sure that performers, broadcasters, journalists are treated fairly and their economic and workplace interests are looked after, we need to know what's going to be happening, not just what's happening today.
And so much is changing. We've had so many conversations here in the Influencer Studio. So much is changing on the content side, the advertising side, and I assume what it means to be a performer and an actor and all the things that you mentioned is changing very much too. And I want to dive into how technology is changing all these things. First, tell me, how does the union work as far as this age that we live in of Netflix and YouTube and Hulu and just the explosion of content that we're in? For those who just aren't familiar with who's unionized and who's not and what's authorized and what's not, like how does that whole thing work?
Sure, well, I mean, one of the things that's great about the entertainment industry is that it's a highly unionized industry, and that's important because the people who work to create those projects for Netflix, for Hulu, and also for all the traditional distribution channels, they typically don't work for the same companies for a really long period of time. And as a result, if they don't have someone looking out for their interests, they tend to get the short end of the stick. They miss out on health benefits, they don't have retirement benefits, they don't have anyone looking out to make sure their working conditions are safe, and that's really what we're here to do. And the good news is that for the major streaming companies like Netflix, like Hulu, for example, like Amazon Prime, they are producing their content under our contracts, and so the performers that you see working in the projects, their original projects they're producing in the US, they are receiving the same types of protections that performers working for traditional network television or in feature films are receiving. And that's, that didn't just happen by accident. That's the result of a lot of hard work on the part of performers, organizing and sticking up for each other, and also the union getting out there and, as I mentioned before, sort of seeing what was coming and negotiating appropriate contracts to help make sure that all of that would be in place when it hit.
There used to be a world of professional video content, and that was pretty much it. But now any amateur can script something, film something, put it up on YouTube. At what point does the union get interested, and at what point does your radar alarm bells go off or something like that? There's so much of a blurring between professional and amateur content, and someone can start off in one place and go to another.
Absolutely. Well, we're interested in all of it and we pay attention to all of it, but our contracts are really focused on content that's created with certain budget levels and with certain levels of sort of professionalism attached to them. Having said that, a lot of our members are interested in creating their own content, because one of the things that's a huge challenge if you're a performer in any type of, in our world, is sort of getting your name out there, getting chosen to be in those professional level projects. And sometimes you do that by creating your own content. So we have rules and systems that allow for that to happen, that allow some flexibility at the sort of self-creation level. But really, once there's an economic engine behind the content that's being created, we're interested in it, and we're interested in making sure that the people whose work created that are taken care of appropriately and that they're not taken advantage of in that process. There is a real risk of that happening because, of course, there's a lot of entrepreneurialism in this space, and that's a great thing, but it also creates risks, and so we're here to balance that out.
One technology that I think has caught a lot of people's attention and probably frankly scared some people is the advanced ability to do digital manipulation on people's faces and bodies. I mean, I've seen videos where somebody just gets into a booth, starts mouthing some words, and then on the screen next to him it looks like Barack Obama or Donald Trump is saying those words. And it's not 100%, but you can totally see how in a couple years it's going to get really, really good. So how does this advanced ability to manipulate likenesses and people digitally change what it means to be an actor and change the kind of considerations that you have?
Well, I mean, that is an area that we are laser focused on right now. Protecting the image rights of our members is something that we do not only through contracts, but also through public policy advocacy, legislative efforts, and other methods like that. So, so we're really interested and focused on that. Now, that's not to say that we want to limit the ability of content creators with consent to use all kinds of technology to create new and interesting types of projects, because we want that. We want our content creators to be able to do that. But the key there is the consent. And whenever that's done, it needs to have the consent of the people who are participating in it. There's a huge problem right now that's been developing with deepfakes, and particularly, to be perfectly honest, pornographic type of deepfakes. We are actively engaged in legislative efforts to try and bring a halt to that. Really the key is when people's images are going to be used, it needs to be done with their consent. The companies that work with us, that have contracts with us, this is really not so much of a problem with them because that's how they operate. But it is a problem outside of that area, and it's one that we're very, very focused on.
So, a two-part follow-up to that. What's the current state of the technology there, and is there a technological solution to solving this? You need public policy in place, obviously, but you can't be everywhere, and there's going to be continually probably an explosion of this content, right?
Well, I think typically the way we create the technological solution is by coming to a consensus between the tech community, the content community, the talent community, the regulatory community, and then figuring out how to actually carry that out in the real world. The people, the entities who are engaged in deepfake porn type stuff, those are not mainstream entities. Yeah. Those are people operating on the fringes, and probably the types of tools that we'll need to combat that are the types of tools you use to combat fringe operations. Yeah. But in terms of what you brought up, in terms of how that technology is going to be used to create new content in the future, that's something that I think will really be determined primarily through negotiation, through contract negotiation. That probably won't be so much controlled through legislation or other methods like that.
Let's talk about another emerging technology, which I'm sure you're focused on, which is virtual reality, and maybe to a certain extent augmented reality. What does it mean for an actor or someone that you represent to be a part of a virtual reality production? What does that change as far as what you're concerned about?
It doesn't change a whole lot for us. We consider the process of capturing images and capturing content, which we call performance capture, other people sometimes call it motion capture, to be just the same thing as doing a project on a regular camera. It's just a different type of camera, it's a different type of recording. Now obviously we have a video game contract, an interactive agreement, and so when that type of content is then used to essentially animate or digitally create a storyline or something like that, that's one set of contract terms. And then where it's used to actually create a linear story as part of a movie or a television series or some internet content that's not designed to be highly interactive, we have a different set of contract terms that apply to that. But in all of those cases, we view that as just another form of the fundamental thing that our talent are engaged in, which is creating a performance. And however they do that, in whatever way, technological way that's being captured, that's something that we cover, and we have contract terms that are designed to protect them.
A very small percentage of actors are multimillionaires. Many are just regular, hardworking folks. Yeah. Are the economic realities of what it means to be an actor fundamentally changing in any significant way, and is that being driven by technology?
Well, I mean, content is so crucial. Of course, we have more television series on air, television, including, of course, streaming services on air than ever in history. So there are a lot of opportunities. Some people call it the golden age of television right now. It creates a lot of opportunities, but it also creates some economic risks for people. The reality is you can't just assume the old system is going to just stay in place. You can't sit on your laurels and hope that everything will just stay the same. So our strategy is to try and be proactive and make sure that there are economic protections in place so that people can make a career of it. But I think that's the most important fundamental point is, as a society, we should want there to be people who can make a career of creating content that moves us. And if we don't tend to that and make sure that that can happen, if we allow all content to become amateur content, then we've really lost something very, very important and significant to our society and our culture. Other countries do that by providing government funding or having government involvement. That's not our system. Our system is to let the marketplace deal with it, but we're part of that marketplace, and we're helping to make sure that there can be career creators of content, that you can have a career as an actor. It's hard. It's always been hard, and it will always be hard. But it's got to be possible, and that's what we're here to do.
And is there a minimum threshold that an actor has to do to be able to be in the union? Is there?
Yeah, there's an eligibility requirement, which basically is, depending on what type of acting you do, if you're a principal performer, you have to get at least one, you have to get hired for a role by one of the signatory companies that make projects under our contracts.
Yeah.
If you're a background performer, there's a different way of getting eligibility over a course of several projects. And if you're a recording artist or a broadcast journalist, the system is a little different. But in all of those cases, you essentially have to have some kind of professional work experience in order to join the union as a member. But I will say, we think there are a lot of people out there who are our pre-members. They're not members yet, but they're going to be members in the future, and we think about them also when we're looking at what kind of protections need to be in place.
Last thoughts, final thoughts, big thoughts. What's going to happen in 2019? What are you excited about?
Well, we got a lot of negotiations coming up in 2019, so we're excited about that. But I think from a CES sort of tech perspective, one of the things that I've noticed, having been here a couple of days now, is 5G is definitely not coming, it's here. And how that's going to change mobile, the access to mobile content, I think is really interesting. If it's going to push a greater interest in mobile content, that's something that our members are highly engaged in developing, both on the entertainment side and also on the news and broadcast side. And so, seeing whether that actually expands even further, the sort of golden age of television to a golden age of mobile, that's something that could very well be coming. And we're
platinum age, perhaps?
Maybe so.
You're not the first to mention 5G here in the studio, so I
Really?
appreciate you bringing that up. And it is a theme that we've seen with a lot of resonance here. Duncan Crabtree-Ireland, SAG-AFTRA, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for watching. I'm James Kotecki here in the C-Space Influencer Studio at CES 2019. Keep it right here, because more great conversations are just ahead.